Now, a huge part of content creation is capturing interviews. Today, I'll be sharing with you 10 tips that I take with me every time I go to capture some interviews. There's like a lot of camera work involved, there's a lot of technical work involved, but today I'm going to be going over the non-technical tips for capturing great interviews and getting great content from your subject. I'm not sure if you've ever spoken on camera before. I went so many years as a videographer without ever knowing what it was like to speak on camera. And then when I started this YouTube channel, my eyes were opened. I realized that it was incredibly difficult and nerve-wracking to talk in front of a camera. This is your opportunity to make a great impression on your client by making this awkward process as painless as possible for them. As a video entrepreneur, it's in your best interest to make sure this process is painless for your client. If it's just a horrible, difficult, nerve-wracking, awkward thing for them, they're not gonna wanna make videos in the future with you, if you get what I'm saying. Tip number 1 is prepare interview questions in advance. When I think of an interview, I think of somebody asking questions and somebody responding candidly to them. No script involved, typically. I even like to show these questions to the clients so they know kind of where I'm leading them, what direction I'm taking the video, and if the client is the one that's going to be on camera, it's good for them to take a look at these questions in advance so they can feel a little bit prepared, and hopefully that'll help with their nerves. Prepare 5 to 10 questions for a short video and 10 to 20 questions for a much longer video. Ensure you're answering questions like the who, what, when, how, where, and why. And I always like to insert a question in there that prompts the statement, "Hi, this is my name and this is what I do." Kind of like this.
Hi, I'm Melissa Martin. I'm the CEO of Communities and Schools of Mid-America.
My name is Sean Barnard. I am the owner of BAMBOU Salon and Spas. We own 2 locations, one in downtown Overland Park, which is where I'm speaking from today, and the other one is in Blue Springs, Missouri.
Tip number 2 is show up early to set up. This is something I haven't always done, but when I started doing it, it kind of felt like I should have been doing it all along. If the client is just sitting around waiting for you to set up, they could become nervous during that period of time. So just get there like 15 minutes early, and that gives you a chance to focus on lighting the shot well and framing it well and all that stuff. Tip number 3 is immediately be warm and non-intimidating to the client. If they roll up and you're just kind of ready to be out of there, that doesn't really put the client in a great mindset, and you risk getting bad content. So it's good to build a little bit of rapport with the subject that's going to be on camera. Ask them about their life, talk about the weather, talk about stuff in the news. Don't just plop them in the chair and say go. Nobody wants that. Hopefully building rapport will allow them to get a little bit warmed up, allow them to be a little bit less nervous with you, the camera, and everything that's kind of going on this weird, out of the norm day for them. Tip number 4 is tell the subject where to sit and how to sit. Typically, when the subject is not facing the camera, you want to put them either to the left or the right side of the frame, and that's just textbook filmmaking knowledge. Angle your subject's chair to face you, and you should be sitting on either the left or the right side of the lens directly behind the camera. Also, make sure your subject has good posture. Avoid things like office chairs and couches because that makes the subject sink in a little bit and it just doesn't look great. The best place to have someone seated for an interview is on a stool. That forces them to sit up straight, but if you have to use a chair, I tend to tell them to either sit up straight or keep their back off of the back of the chair, which kind of makes it act like a stool when I don't have one. Tip number 6 is tell the subject how this is all gonna go down. Now what I mean by this is whoever you're interviewing might not know exactly how this happens or how this works. Give them a rundown of the basics. This is typically how things go for me. I like to let the subject know that I'll be asking them questions one by one. Usually if I'm interviewing somebody, the subject has already seen the questions beforehand, but if they haven't, I like to let them at least glance over them just before we start shooting. Let the subject know where to look when they're responding to you. You wouldn't believe how many times I've gotten that question when I'm interviewing people. It's like, where do I look? Let the subject know about how long their responses should be, and be sure to remind them to put the question back in the answer. That helps with context in editing a ton. Let the subject know that if they mess up, that's perfectly fine and you can edit it out and it's no big deal. You can let them know that they can just pick up where they left off. In addition to that, I like to let the subject know that I'm gonna make them look super badass on camera, and that generally makes them smile and I'm being full of myself, and that's kind of funny every once in a while. Tip number 7 is keep eye contact with the subject when you're filming. This is kind of awkward and it's a technique that needs to be practiced, but giving your subject a place to bring their eyes up to and connect with helps them keep going and keep with the thought. You'll be surprised if you break that eye contact, you'll watch them like stumble. It's actually kind of important to keep that eye contact there. In addition to this, I like to give a good nod every time the subject is getting somewhere with something. That communicates that I'm interested in what they're saying and that they should go on, and we definitely want them to go on. Which brings us to tip number 8. Capture more than less. It's important to stay patient as you're capturing these interviews. Make sure the full answer has been revealed before you go on to the next question, or you risk not getting enough content, which makes the editing phase a lot more difficult for you. If there's a certain point where you feel like you need to deviate from your prepared questions, I say certainly do so. Focus on capturing the whole story and not just getting it finished. Tip number 9 is when you're interviewing with multiple people. If you're using different interviews in the same video, what I like to do is ask each subject the exact same list of questions so I can splice together the interviews in post-production, kind of like this.
Narthex is a startup company. We've been in Edison Spaces for about 6 months.
We started in our living room, and by the time we were 3, the dining table couldn't take any more, and we were just sure we needed our own space.
Well, I think Edison Spaces is the critical first step for any startup company.
You see how they go back and forth with each other. It's kind of a cool effect. It's something that I've done for a while, but you know, it always turns out nice. Tip number 10 is usually how I wrap things up. I usually like to ask like, hey, is there anything that I missed? Is there anything that you'd like to go over? Is there anything that you feel like would be relevant to your audience? And most of the time people have things to add, and I'm always happy that I asked that question in the end. There it is, that's 10. Thank you guys for watching my video today. Be sure to hit that red subscribe button and like this video for more awesome content like this, and be sure to have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much for watching.